Week 1 is behind us. Plenty of chaos, surprises, and some downright disappointments. Should we be panicking just yet on some of these players? Well, we'll get to all that. Plus, we'll turn the page to week 2 as we prepare to continue to dominate our fantasy football leagues. Jump in the chat with your start-sit questions, with your panic or patience questions. It is time for this week's maybe ADP. Welcome into another edition of Another Damn Fantasy Podcast. ADP is powered by Bite Size Sports. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button as we are on our way to 700 subscribers. Today's episode going to be packed full of news, panic or patience players, start sits today. It's gonna be our new in-season type of show as we react to week 1 and prepare for week 2. As always, I am here joined by Josh Lemonsan. Josh, how did week 1 treat you?
Pretty good. I got a little bit of luck from the fantasy gods. An injury we'll talk about definitely helped my team out as I secured a week 1 victory. I got my first win in our ADP league, so it's off to a good start there. And it was just fun to, be on my phone checking fantasy results update all day.
That's right.
I forget how fun that is now watching every game, not just my Vikes. I still go 100% fan mode when the Vikes are on, but outside of that, I'm just looking for fantasy numbers, and it's really fun. I'm glad it's back.
Yeah, you have to. It's kind of nice. I like it when, like, the Chiefs obviously played on Thursday Night Football, so now when I'm watching the games, I've got my 4 games up from my YouTube TV. Like, I'm just watching football, right? I'm not necessarily cheering for any one team. I just wanna watch some good football. It was nice. It felt like we were definitely back finally, and we were in the full swing of things. Unfortunately, that comes with injury. It comes with usage, right? We have some answers to who's going to be the running back for some of these teams. And we're going to talk about some of those things, but then there's also the positives, the Jameson Williams, the Xavier Worthies, Likely, right? So Isaiah Likely, there were some good things that we can talk through as well as we'll kind of talk about, are we ready to party with these guys? Or are we going to go ahead and pass on them and let somebody else take the L later on in the season? If you're here with us tonight, thank you so much for being here. Jump in the chat. What do you want to hear about? Who do you have questions about? Who are you panicking about? Start sits here at the end of the show. If you got some start sit questions, throw them in the chat as well. We are here for the people. Josh, up top here, quick reaction to week 1.
Yeah, so for me, it's just, and I feel like I was kind of late to the party, but I feel like, Lee mentions in the chat bad QB play all weekend. That kind of goes right hand in hand with mine. I feel like the necessity of getting a rushing or quarterback with rushing upside is more and more a thing. It's been that way for a couple of years now, I feel, but I just think that to have success at the quarterback position, you need to have a rare elite talent, or you need to have a guy that can run the ball. I noted that 4 out of the top 10 QBs this week had rushing touchdowns. We had Baker Mayfield with, he was QB2, but that's a little bit of an anomaly. We'll talk more about him later. But I just think passing QBs have to work so much harder. I mean, Tua threw for almost 350 yards. He didn't have a particularly fantastic game. He was QB8, so he's definitely startable. And, I'll reference Lee's quote again, bad QB play all weekend. It's just hard to find that top tier talent at quarterback. But I know I have Anthony Richardson in one of my leagues, and he didn't particularly have a great game as a quarterback, but as a fantasy quarterback, he was great, and he had some great throws. And so we know he's still very raw, but I mean, I love that he's my fantasy quarterback. He'd give me heart attacks all the time if he was the Vikings quarterback. He'd be fun to watch, but I don't know. I just feel like, and Jaden Daniels, the Commanders didn't look very particularly great, but he put up great fantasy numbers for a rookie in his first game. Like, I just think that if you can find, I know we're done with draft season, but I just feel like if you got one of the guys that had some big rushing upside, you look at their stats, every every top 10 quarterback had at least 20 or 30 rushing yards. Like, you need a guy that's going to scamper a little bit. And again, I think it's been true for the past couple of years, but I think even more so now that there are more options there as well. It's not just Lamar, not just Josh Allen. And those guys, of course, ran the ball really well last week or this past week. Obviously, were difference makers as well. So to me, my quick reaction for week 1 is the rushing quarterback is reigning supreme. And I feel like going forward, that's all I'm going to be looking for. And maybe people knew that before me. I just feel like past couple of years, it's been really hitting home, and now I've jumped on for sure. So,
well, you're not ever going to hear an argument from me that the rushing quarterback is king. Josh Allen, QB1, Jaden Daniels, QB3, Richardson, QB4. Great games by those guys from a fantasy perspective this week. My quick reaction, the tight ends, man, they proved once again that you don't have to use that high draft capital to get usable week-to-week points out of this position. Isaiah Likely, Foster Moreau, the top 2 tight ends this week.
Yep.
They weren't drafted in redraft leagues. The elites are going to be fine in season long, right? We're not going to overreact and think that these elite tight ends are going to be bad. We will talk about a couple of them throughout the show. But there's always streaming options. And if it just doesn't fall to you in the draft, I think it's just something we need to start remembering year after year. Don't reach for somebody, a tight end. If they fall to you, great, take them. If they don't fall to you, let it go. In our ADP draft last week, tight end was never there for me. I just let it go. I draft Isaiah Likely with my very last non-quarterback defense pick. I didn't know he was going to do what he did. I didn't know he was going to be tight end 1 on the week. But if he would have stunk it up, whatever, I drop him, pick up the next streaming tight end. Instead, maybe I hit gold with this one.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. And he, we talked about it, you and I, that was kind of a steal that he even fell that far, that he was at the last pick, and because he's shown flashes of that talent. We just aren't sure how much the Ravens are going to pass. Mark Andrews is an elite producer at tight end, and so you don't necessarily think about it. But I mean, yeah, he had 26 fantasy points.
That's right.
Gave you a +12 on whoever had tight end too. That's a huge advantage in any fantasy league. So
we're gonna go some positives here as we kind of reviewed last week. If you're in the chat with us, let us know who is your biggest winner of the week. These can be guys that you were just really high on for the week. Maybe you have them in multiple leagues. Maybe, it was just one player that helped you win a week in one of your leagues. Just who are you high on? Let us know in the chat. I will start here, and I'm just gonna start with my boy that I've been talking about for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yep.
Quit bragging about it. I mean, Likely could have been my win of the week too. Honestly, let's be real here. But I'm going right back to Rashee Rice. 7 catches on 9 targets, 103 yards. Yep. Look, the touchdowns didn't go his way this week, right? The touchdowns went to Xavier Worthy. But Rashee Rice, not only have I been talking about him over and over and over again, him and Jamison Williams are my 2 highest exposure wide receivers in best ball. I'm feeling great after week 1. Give me all the money, right?
Yep.
I drafted Rashee Rice at the back end of the 3rd round, 2 straight drafts on stream. I tout him over and over again. He ends up as a wide receiver 14 in PPR. So he doesn't go win you your week probably this week because he doesn't find the end zone. Mm-hmm. All the top 12 wide receivers this week found the end zone. Rashee Rice does not find the end zone. But I'm not worried about that because Xavier Worthy had 2 touchdowns on 3 targets. So it was just a good scheme for the Chiefs. Rashee Rice will have the touchdowns. And the biggest win here, Rashee Rice, 34% target share. Yep. He was the target monster. I assume he would be all season long. Week 1, Mahomes was looking his way on that slant route. Anytime a linebacker wanted to try to guard Rashee Rice, he just ran a slant, and Mahomes hit him on the first read. And I'm feeling really great about that call after 1 week.
Yeah, for sure. And I was just going to say that before you mentioned the target share percentage, I was going to say, yeah, the only number you care about with that is the 9 targets he had, right? Because he's going to catch at least 5 or 6 of those every week. And that means he's going to get at least 70, 80 yards. And if you tack a touchdown there, you have a really nice floor. And then obviously upside's still there as well, for sure.
Josh, before we get to yours, Lee says he had Bears defense on 5 of his teams. That's pretty legit.
Nice.
Will Levis with the meltdown of the century.
Oh,
anytime your coach comes out and says, if we would have punted on 1st and 10 every time, we might have won the football game. The Titans are down bad right now after week 1.
Yes.
Sorry, James, if you're out there. But, yeah, the Titans are down bad. Josh, what was your biggest win of the week?
Mine was Ramondre Stevenson. I was kind of touting him when we did our draft last week, and I took him at the 6'9", and I remember saying I like the value there to go along with I think Bijan was my first round pick. So it was like I waited a bunch of rounds after I knew I was taking a safer player, and I wasn't ever going to say the Patriots offense was going to be amazing, and I still don't think they're going to be that particularly great. But what I want is a guy with volume, and he had 25 carries. He had 3 catches on 3 targets. And again, he's not going to get 28 touches every game, but what he did with it was great. He averaged almost 5 yards a carry. He got into the end zone. His receiving was non-existent, 3 catches for like 6 yards. So it's not like I got a lot of points there. But again, the numbers I'm looking for are touches. So if he ends up at 20 plus touches every game, and who knows what to make of the Bengals after that performance to the Patriots. Definitely the game did not go how I was expecting it to go, but I just felt good to see that volume from Ramondre, because that's kind of what I'd kind of late in the draft season, I kind of hopped on that train. Like, this is a guy that you should target for value, who has got a high floor, who's going to be stable for you. And he proved exactly that. So he was my biggest win for the week, just because he kind of backed up what I was saying about him. And again, they only put up 16 points. I think the Patriots, they won 16-10 was the final score.
Yep.
So it's not like it was an abnormal game where they had like 5 extra touchdowns they normally do. So he still feels safe to me, and he proved that. So as long as he gets, maybe even 15 plus touches a game, and we're looking at a guy who's going to be a decent running back too for me. So I'm very happy about Ramondre. He's my biggest win for the season, or for the week, for the season yet.
No, I mean, he's a workhorse. He might be the biggest one for the season by the time the end of the season goes, because they did exactly what they wanted to do. Played great defense and just gave the ball to Ramondre. 28 total touches to Gibson's 7. I looked up his snap counts just because I was curious. 78% of the snaps. So he barely came off the field as well, with Gibson having the other 22%. And then, you mentioned the targets. Gibson had 0, though. So it wasn't like what I kind of expected was Gibson was going to come in and spell Ramondre and get the target share. That didn't happen in week 1. So, I think you're spot on. That's a nice win.
Yep.
With wins comes losses, right? So let's talk about the other side of things. Let's talk about your biggest loss of the week. If you're in the chat, let us know your biggest loss of the week. Same idea, right? Maybe it's somebody we touted quite often. We maybe we drafted them everywhere. Maybe they just lost us one game in one league. Whatever the case may be, you all know you got a biggest loser out there. Josh, I'll let you start on this one. Who is your biggest loser from week 1?
Devastating Chris Olave performance.
God.
2 catches, 2 targets, 11 yards. And maybe the whole team played bad? No, they played the worst team in the league. Derek Carr had 3 touchdown passes. They won 47-10. When I kept seeing that box score, I was like, oh yeah, my flag plant. I'm a genius. My flag plant was great. Again, a week after I planted my flag for Olave, he gets 2 catches for 11 yards in a game where his team dominated. Now, I still think he's talented enough where this feels more like an anomaly than anything else. But the Saints offense is not going to get, aside from the next time they play Carolina, they're not going to get an easier matchup. And so it's a huge bummer that this was the showing he put together. And Derek Carr, come on, you have 3 touchdown passes and you can't find your wide receiver 1. Stop throwing to your tight ends, man. Making me look bad.
He's got the tight end 2 and the tight end 4. Why would you throw to wide receiver 1?
It's mind-boggling, but that is the biggest L I have to take this week, and hopefully it's just for this week.
Yeah, that one's weird, because I don't even know. I don't know how to feel moving forward quite yet, just on Olave. Like, I assume he'll be fine, but
it's worrisome. That's
when you see the box score and you see Derek Carr's stats.
Yeah.
you just automatically assume Olave at least had an average game.
Right?
At least had an average game. It wasn't quite there. Mine was a little different. My biggest loss of the week is Stephon Diggs. And not because Stephon Diggs did bad, but because Stephon Diggs did well, 6 catches for 33 yards, 2 touchdowns. He ends up as a top 10 wide receiver. Those 2 touchdowns were short yardage touchdowns. I just didn't really expect him to be acclimated this quickly. I didn't really expect CJ Stroud to lean on Stephon Diggs the way he did. I know Diggs, it's well known. He has fast starts every single year. It seems like he has great Septembers and then tapers off. I just didn't expect it with a new team, first game out. You've already seen some diva stuff in camp. I didn't expect CJ Stroud to throw in the ball that often. I picked Dell over Steph Diggs everywhere I could this week. Not really a huge believer in Steph Diggs in Houston. I think Nico Collins and Tank Dell just have such great rapport with CJ Stroud that I think it's going to be hard to find for Diggs over season long. Through week 1, he proved me wrong. He proved me wrong in week 1.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can't discredit the touchdowns. I still think, like, I'm still with you. I think we'll talk a little bit later about it too, but I still like Collins and Dell over him for the rest of season. But yeah, 2 touchdowns. He proved me wrong right off the bat as well. I did not see it panning out that way. That's for sure. Finished as a top 10 QB or wide receiver 9 this week. So
good week for him. All right, we're gonna get into some news. I like that like quick recap. That's fun, just to get a couple quick guys there. But let's get into some relative news here for fantasy football. Really, I feel like I kind of buried the lead because we didn't talk about Jordan Love at all. And I know it was back Friday, and I didn't even put him on the sheet here.
Yeah.
But we could at least talk a little bit about Jordan Love and this Green Bay Packers team. Now, Jordan Love, if you didn't see, gets injured with like 2 plays left maybe. I think Malik Willis came in for 1 play to throw a Hail Mary and actually got sacked on the play. Jordan Love out 3-4 weeks. I think the initial thing said maybe 2 to 4. So I'm not 100% sure how
I saw 3 to 6 at one point. I think the best news out of all of it is they haven't come out and said he needs surgery, year's done, and they haven't put him on IR. So that might suggest that it's going to be probably good in 3 weeks, and then maybe wait and see and hopefully get him back before the 4-week threshold. Because if you go on IR, you have to miss 4 games for sure. So that's all good news. But yeah, huge bummer. I'm not a Packers fan at all. I hate the Packers, but
You're not?
I'm surprised, right? Yeah. But you don't wish that on the guy. And he was slinging it, and he was off to a good start for the season. So you feel for him. And so hopefully it is just the 3 weeks, maybe the 3rd week is precautionary, and then he's back at it. So, but yeah, definitely affects the receiving core in Green Bay for fantasy. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, Packers, huge aspirations this year.
Yep.
Picked in the, if you're watching like a Good Morning Football, those picks, they're picking the Packers to go to the Super Bowl. A lot of people around the industry really like this Packers team.
Yep.
And now you got to roll out Malik Willis. And so from a fantasy standpoint, I'm in agreement with you. I'm out. If anything, if it's a good matchup, I would love to play Josh Jacobs just because I think Malik Willis is going to hand it off about 45 times.
Yep.
And maybe keep Jaden Reed, excuse me. He might be the only flex-worthy play.
Right.
But everybody else I think I'm completely out on until not dropping these guys.
No.
But they're on my bench until either Malik Willis shows that he has any idea how to play NFL football or Jordan Love is back and healthy again. I do think they'll try to push him, though. I do think they'll try to get him back earlier because they can't start the season 0-3, 0-4 and expect to make a deep run.
Well, and Matt LaFleur is an elite offensive coaching mind. So if anyone's going to get Malik Willis up to speed to be somewhat competent as a game manager, or at least keep the ball moving, like Like he's the one to be able to do it. So I'd be interesting to see how they scheme up their next matchup and just see if they can get something rolling. Because they're not bringing anybody in. I know the first thing people said was, how come they're not signing Ryan Tannehill to come in and just steady the ship for a few weeks, right?
Yeah.
It looks like they're just rolling with him. So maybe there's hope there for Packer Nation. But
why'd they trade for Malik Willis and not a guy like maybe Trey Lance wasn't available for a trade,
yeah.
but I don't know. Malik Willis just seemed like an odd trade, and for it to happen so quickly, now he's in the game. Like, oh man,
I know. Yeah.
This guy just got beat out by Will Levis, who just had one of the biggest meltdowns in NFL history. So, good luck to Go Pack Go. All right,
that's tough. Yep.
All right, let's talk about some other guys here. Tomorrow night, Thursday night football, you will not have Raheem Mostert. He has already been ruled out for the game.
Okay.
Leaving Devon Achane potentially as the workhorse, except for he's also battling injury.
Yep.
Have you seen anything more about this, maybe this evening or anything?
No, this afternoon I checked on Achane, and he was like a partial participant at walkthrough. So
okay,
I think there's still hope. I mean, I'm an Achane owner in one of my longer standing leagues, and he was awesome, and I loved that I started him. And then immediately when I checked, there was a Q next to his name, because there always is. And so this is just the game. If you're in any sort of shallow enough leagues or 10-team leagues, I would look at getting Jalen Wright, the rookie. I have him as a handcuff. I don't think Jeff Wilson off. I know Jeff Wilson will probably get some carries if Mostert's out, but we kind of know what he is, right? So if Achane can't go tomorrow, I'm going to throw Jalen Wright in for upside and hope for the best in that league, just because, Mike McDaniel's from the Kyle Shanahan tree, where it doesn't really matter what running backs back there, they're going to be productive for you. So, i.e. Jordan Mason last night or 2 nights ago.
That's right.
So watch Achane carefully. And it's really unfortunate that they have a Thursday night matchup, because against the Bills, who gave up a lot of points to the Cardinals, so you expect a shootout, Bills Dolphins. And so it'd be a bummer if both of them can't go for sure. So it's tough.
Yeah, if Achane's in, I don't really love. If I had to choose between Wright and Wilson, if Achane is playing and you're just in a pinch, you have to start somebody. Yeah. I would go Jeff Wilson. I think he's probably going to be like more of the Raheem Mostert play.
Yeah, probably get more carries for sure.
If Achane is out, I think Jalen Wright has the explosive upside type of play that Devon Achane has. So that's the way I'm looking at it, and we'll kind of see how tomorrow goes. You brought up Jordan Mason. He got the run Monday night because Christian McCaffrey has Achilles tendonitis. Sounds terrible. Sounds painful. Already in question for week 2. I don't really foresee him playing in week 2, and that's a bummer. 101, right? You draft him 101, you're going to miss out the first 2 weeks. If he misses, Jordan Mason is an auto start. Put him in your lineup.
Yep, 100%. Like we just said about the, Kyle Shanahan and running backs, like Jordan Mason, he looked good too, not just because of the scheme either. He was running really well on Monday night. He definitely has earned the chance to get some starts. And the Niners were Super Bowl bound last year. They're coming off a week 1 win. Like, rushing McCaffrey back makes no sense. I even saw something that they said that had it been a playoff game, they think McCaffrey would have given it a go. And so they're already in kind of damage control mode, and which, again, like you said, if he's your 101, which he was for a lot of people, that really sucks from a fantasy standpoint. But they're already thinking deep into the playoffs right now. They don't really care about September games in terms of how much they put up. They think they can win, and they've proven it already. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him this week and maybe even the week after. You never know. So
Ken Walker in Seattle also had an abdominal injury. I think he's probably going to play this week, but just keep it on your radar if you're a Ken Walker manager. Jordan Addison, your boy there in Minnesota, cannot stay on the field, man.
No.
Re-injures his ankle. What do you got for us here on Addison? Any insight?
I don't know anything. I think I know he missed practice, but that was probably going to be a given regardless. I don't know if he's still, I think he's still questionable. Like, he hasn't been put on IR yet, so there's maybe some hope still, but I don't know. I'm trying to see if there's been any updates recently, but but yeah, ankle injuries are scary. You never want to see, you never want to count on those guys coming back fast from that because, they can linger quite a bit. So,
Absolutely.
So that's tough there because he was having a good game again. But yeah, everywhere I look, he's just, he didn't practice today, but he's still questionable for Sunday. And we have the Niners this week, so it's a big game for us.
Yeah.
So if he's ready to go, he'll be out there. But I guess from a fantasy standpoint, if he plays, he's worth consideration. Darnold proved that Darnold completed pass to 8 different receivers. He was efficient. I'm not saying he's going to stick that way or stay that way the whole season, but Addison should definitely get a healthy amount of targets. So if there's no Q by his name Sunday morning and you need your wide receiver 2/flex, he's definitely in consideration. But if he's like a game time decision or not, I'd definitely be scared away from him for this week because the Niners have a good defense. I'm not expecting the Vikings to put up 35 points anyway. So
I agree with that. Puka is on the IR. You already know that by now. I don't think it does a lot for anybody outside of, we'll talk maybe a little bit about Colby Parkinson later. Obviously, Cooper Kupp just his 6th round draft capital is just absolutely stupid at this point. Because I passed on Puka in our ADP league. He was right there. He's a guy I always drafted. And there was just weird vibes around camp like the last 2 weeks. Talking about this knee injury, and he gave it a go, wasn't ready, and unfortunately hits the IR. Then T. Higgins. We're going to talk a little bit about Joe Burrow here in a minute, so I won't go too far into this. But T. Higgins in street clothes. He now has a hamstring injury. So new injury, new week. Hasn't even played football yet, but something's fishy in Cincinnati. Jake, go ahead.
No, you're right. I think that's the best way to describe it. Cincinnati scares the crap out of me. They lose to the Patriots. They don't have T. Higgins. Joe Burrow, who we're going to talk about in a second, is downplaying this rumor that he has a wrist injury and he didn't have a good game. So is he downplaying something that's actually there? It's tough for a team that was a really strong contender a few years ago to just be in complete disarray right now. It feels very weird, but I'm scared of most Bengals right now. I mean, Jamar Chase in a bad game had 6 for 62, so you're still starting Jamar Chase, but outside of that, I think you're very worried about Cincinnati playmakers.
Yeah, weird vibes in Cincinnati for sure. A couple tight ends here. Jake Ferguson avoids an ACL injury, but he has an MCL sprain. He's out 2 to 4 weeks. And then David Njoku has already been ruled out for this week, week 2, due to an ankle injury. So a couple tight ends who were drafted to be your starting tight end that you're now going to need to stream.
A lot of people are – oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying a lot of people are leaning on Brandon Cooks. I've been hearing going into this week too. He did have a touchdown for Dallas, so that he maybe gets more targets. I'm not going to stake that claim. I'm just other things I'm hearing. I figured I'd relay. And then the backup in Cleveland for Njoku, I think Jordan Akins, he had 3 targets when he came in near the end of that game. So might still use their tight end, but yeah, again, tough.
Akins, old Houston Texan, right?
Yeah, unless I got his first name wrong. I know his last name is Akins, but
yeah, I think it's Jordan.
Okay. But either way, not that they're Jordan Akins. Not that Cleveland's exactly the offense you want parts of right now, but he's slated to be tight end 1, and so if you were the Njoku owner and you didn't have a backup, I mean, you could do worse than the guy who is going to get reps there. So
yeah. We will have our starts of the week here coming up. So we have a couple tight ends. I have a tight end at least that you could potentially find on your waiver wire. So if you had Njoku or Ferguson, stick around for that. We will talk about starts and sits of the week later on. But first, we are going to do a new segment to the show, Panic or Patience first, and then we were going to do Party or Pass. So obviously it is what it is, right? We're going to talk about if we're going to be panicked on these players or we are just going to be patient and wait it out. And then we're going to talk about players who went off and we didn't think they would go off. Isaiah Likely, Foster Moreau, these kind of players that went off. Are we going to party with them and get them on in our starting lineups? Are we going to pass and let somebody else deal with what might be the headache in the future? Lee says Cleveland doesn't have a quarterback. They have a quarterback. His name's Deshaun Watson, and he sucks. So, correct. He's way overpaid, and he's not good at #football. And Lee also had Puka in 3 different leagues.
Ugh,
that is
sucks.
a rough start.
Yep.
All right, panic or patience. Let's jump into this, starting with quarterback. And we were just talking about the Cincinnati Bengals.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you give your take first on this Joe Burrow situation. He goes 21 of 29, 164 yards. He ended up as a quarterback 29. Only 33 quarterbacks scored a fantasy point and he was quarterback 29. How do you feel? Panic or patience here with Joe Burrow?
I have a little tiny amount of patience left for like 2 weeks, if that makes sense, right? We just talked about the fishy vibes in Cincinnati. We just talked about how everything's on the downturn. But on the other side, we've seen Burrow play really, really well. We've seen him be an elite level quarterback, and there's a lot of rust there. He didn't play a lot last year at the end of last year, and they just have all these. I just feel like it was a weird start, but they have a game under their belt. They're going to hit. I have to think they're all really pissed off that they lost to the Patriots 16-10. So I like a revenge game. I think they are going to Arrowhead. Is that right? Week 2?
Yep.
They're coming to you guys.
Coming here to get stomped.
So it's a tough matchup, but definitely one that they'll be getting up for. So I'm keeping patience on Joe Burrow. I think he's still got it. I mean, if the wrist injury is not something that he can downplay too much longer, that's an issue. But I'm not going to panic yet on Burrow. I'm gonna have a little bit more patience with him.
I am full blown panic. I have a super flex dynasty league, and I'm like actually legitimately worried about Joe Burrow here.
Yep.
We talked about T. Higgins and freaking street clothes with now a hamstring injury all of a sudden. Like, where did that even come from? The guy hasn't practiced in a couple weeks, and he didn't play in the game. I don't think this Bengals organization is really worth anything. Like, I think they're really playing this bad. They couldn't find a way to sign Higgins long term. They can't find a way to sign Jamar Chase right now. A hangnail is going to keep these guys out of the lineup all season long. Like, if they have any type of lingering issue, I don't think these 2 wide receivers are going to be playing. And they don't have a running back in Cincinnati. Zach Moss, Chase Brown, they both look bad. I'm completely panicked on Joe Burrow right now. And dynasty leagues or super flex leagues, like, you can't get rid of him. Right. But in a redraft league, one quarterback, I am fine with sending him to Drop City. Like, I would be fine with that. Moving on, Trevor Lawrence, 12 for 21, 162 yards and a touchdown. He was quarterback 23, and I am going to be more patient with this one, mostly because I don't think we're really drafting Trevor Lawrence to be like a fantasy stud. We drafted him, around 10, 11, 12. We want him to be a starting quarterback, and I think he'll give us a chance to have some of that consistency, top 12, week after week. Tough week 1, but I think they got a bad Browns team this week. I think Trevor Lawrence bounces back and gives us a little bit better, QB 12 to 15 range in week 2. Not nearly as bad vibes here in Jacksonville as I have for Cincinnati.
No, for sure. I'm also going to be patient with Trevor Lawrence. I'm still pretty high on him, and I think he can take another step. His receiving core is new this year. He's, Brian Thomas is the rookie there. He's kind of the new guy. He's got Gabe Davis. Maybe they're still working out some kinks. The weird part for me is I didn't get a chance to go back and watch much of the Jags-Dolphins game. The Jags were up 14-0 at one point. They had Bigsby and Etienne both had 12 carries for a decent yards per carry. Like, it looked like they were doing pretty well. They had no turnovers, and then they just had less time of possession. So I'd be curious to see what actually happened in that game, but it doesn't appear that it's, it just maybe.
Well, I can tell you exactly how the game flipped on its head. Jacksonville was driving to go up 17, and Etienne fumbled it into the end zone.
Oh, that's
on like the 3-yard line. Very next play, 80-yard bomb to Tyreek Hill.
Gotcha.
Like, it flipped so fast.
Yeah.
Jacksonville was playing great. That defense was playing great, and it just flipped on its head really fast. But
that explains it. A little bit fluky then. That makes sense.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still patient with T-Law there. So
what's up, the Sports Addict Network? Go give him a follow on Twitter at the Sports Addict. Appreciate you being here. He's a pretty good follow on the Twitter sphere or the X sphere. So thanks for being here, my guy. Lee says don't panic on Joe Burrow. They are 1-9 to start the year. So that's interesting. I didn't know that. So maybe they're just bad in game one. I'll be less panicked if these wide receivers get into practice and on the field come game day. I'll be much less panicked. All right, let's talk about some running backs here. Javonte Williams, 8 for 23, 1 catch on 2 targets, ends up as that RB50. What says you, Josh?
I'm a little bit in panic mode, and it's more just because I think the Broncos are going to have a really bad offense. I mean, they're led by a rookie quarterback. We didn't look particularly great. Seattle's got a good defense, and it was kind of close for a while, I think. But I think the Broncos had 2 safeties in that game, if I remember that right.
I remember seeing a freaking group chat. It was like, have we ever seen 2 safeties from the same team in the same half before? It was like, what just happened?
So their defense definitely kept them in the game a little bit longer than they probably should have been. And I know the Seahawks took a while to get going, but Bo Nix was the leading rusher in that game. I think he had 35 rushing yards. He only threw for like $140. I just don't trust him as an NFL quarterback. I don't trust the Broncos offense enough, which is a bummer because I really like Javonte Williams. And I think the further removed he gets from that injury from a few years ago, he still has a chance to be a running back 1. I just don't see it right now, at least for the foreseeable future. Until that offense proves that they can stay on the field and get him more touches. 8 carries is not enough, in my opinion, at all. And 2 targets for sure. 8 carries is fine if you're also going to throw him 6 passes, but otherwise, I don't know what you're doing. You're not using him, and Bo Nix clearly is not ready to lead this offense. So it might be 5-6 weeks before they're even competent. So I'm in panic mode a little bit on Javonte here.
I'm also in panic mode, but I think I'm in panic mode for a different reason. I'm in panic mode because McLaughlin was super involved, way more than I expected. Towards the end of draft season, I started getting on board with Javonte, and we knew Bo Nix was going to be the starting quarterback. We knew this team was a bad football team. We knew they were going to be a bad offense. Yep. But as you said, you kind of dive into Javonte, you're like, oh, he's going to catch 6 passes a game. That's okay. He's going to get all this work. No, it's actually Jaleel McLaughlin that got the 15 touches to Javonte's 9 touches. Javonte only played 52% of the snaps. That's why I am panicked here, is because this RB2, the backup RB, actually looks like he might be the RB1. And I think he might have caught 6 passes. I didn't have that written down, but when I was doing some research, I think he might have caught 6 passes. So.
McLaughlin had 5, but they were on 5 targets. So he caught all 5 of his targets. Not
it wasn't for big plays, right? No. There wasn't a lot of yardage there, if I remember right.
He only has 1 total yard. There must have been a big loss there then. It must have been a lost play. But yeah, he had 10 carries and 5 catches, completely dwarfing the 10 touches that Javonte had. And none of them had yards. That's just going to be the thing. So
yeah,
if you're going to start either of those running backs, it's got to be whoever's going to get the most volume. And I think that's a good point. Right now, it looks like McLaughlin might be getting the edge there for whatever reason. So
Zamir White, another running back on a bad football team, another running back we thought was going to be the RB1 coming into the season, 13 carries, 34 yards, 2 catches on 2 targets, ends up RB47. And for me, it's very similar to the conversation we said about Javonte Williams. I am panicked because it's Alexander Madison, right? Yeah. He is the one that comes in, plays 60% of the snaps. He is the one that comes in the passing down situations. And I think that Las Vegas is going to be in passing down situations quite often, which could potentially, I'm panicked enough that in 2 to 3 weeks, I wouldn't be surprised if Zamir White was unrosterable. You can't drop him right now because he's still potentially going to be the workhorse back in Las Vegas. But I'm not starting him, and I would not be surprised if he is unrosterable here shortly.
Yeah, I started him as a flex and I was very disappointed, as you would expect. I'm leaning towards panic. I'm not like crazy panicked, but I'm leaning towards panic with Zamir White, because 13 carries for 44 yards is terrible. And like you said, Madison had 6 targets to Zamir White's 2 targets. And this offense isn't going to be that great. And so if they're not running the ball, like, it'd be one thing if Zamir White had 14 carries for like 80 or 90 yards, then I'd feel good, even if Madison was getting the receptions, because then I'm like, okay, I just got a traditional running back, but he's going to give me, 10 to 15 points a game if he gets a touchdown, right? Like, I'm feeling okay about that. But this offense, because the Chargers, I mean, they have a new defensive coordinator. Maybe their defense is a little bit more for real, but not exactly the stifling defense that would prevent a team from not being able to run the ball. So 13 carries, 44 is not what you're looking for, especially if Madison's going to take the bulk of the receiving load. So, I mean, I'm a little bit with this one. I'm a little bit more like, well, it's 1 week. Maybe we got to wait to see a few weeks to see it all balance out. But early indications, it's trending towards a little bit of panic for sure.
One more running back here, a running back we took a little bit higher than Zamir White and Javonte Williams. I almost said Jameson Williams. DeAndre Swift, 10 carries, 30 yards, just 1 target on a Chicago Bears offense that looked flat, incompetent. RB38. How are you feeling here?
I'm kind of in panic mode on DeAndre Swift as well. I mean, part of me feels like I'm overreacting because no one had Herbert had 2 carries, Travis Homer had 2 carries. Like, it seems like it's his backfield. So I think panic might be a little bit too harsh of a term, but for next week, I'm a little panicked because Caleb Williams had a rough go of it for his debut. DeAndre Swift had 10 carries for like 30 yards. He averaged a terrible yards per carry average, and they're going up against the Houston defense next week. So unless their offense magically starts clicking, I'm not out on DeAndre Swift all season. But for next week, for sure, I would say I'm on the panic side of things. I guess, like I mentioned, the one good thing is that it didn't look like Herbert or Homer, or if Roschon Johnson, I don't know if is he hurt? Did I miss something with Roschon Johnson? I can't even.
No, I think he was just inactive.
He was just inactive. So
yeah,
good news in my opinion, that he does seem to be the leader out of this backfield. The problem is if they're not on the field enough or they're not moving the ball, then it doesn't matter. So I think if there's a little sign of life and there's a little improvement from Caleb Williams next week against a tough matchup with the Texans, I'm going to calm down a little bit. But right now I'm kind of leaning panic as well. And maybe not full panic, but it's a little bit disconcerting. Yes.
I'm going to go patient here with DeAndre, and I'm going to go patient because I think the Titans defense is like actually legit. Shout out James, if you're around, my man, dude. The Titans have something going right with this defense. Unfortunately, they also have Will Levis, a quarterback, and Chicago Bears also. And that was the other thing too, right? It's like, yes, the Bears offense looked bad, but you also had a punt block return or something there, and then an interception return. So defense, special teams are scoring a couple times. That keeps your offense off the field. So you're not getting as much play volume there. I think Caleb Williams is going to figure it out. I think this Titans defense was really, really good, and brighter days ahead for the Bears and all of these guys in Chicago.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point.
Before we hit wide receiver, Ventro here in the chat has 2 wide receivers, Pickens, Amari Cooper, and DK Metcalf. He has to start 2 of them. Who are you going with?
I like Pickens and Metcalf here. I think, it is kind of a tough one. And Amari Cooper probably has the track record to be starting out of these 3. I'll quote Lee for saying that, Cleveland doesn't have a quarterback. That definitely going to be an issue. But I'm going to mention Pickens a little bit later. He had a nice target share percentage. And while he didn't have an amazing game, he had a solid game, and he gets so many looks deep every game. And Justin Fields, for what it's worth, is a pretty good deep ball thrower. And so I actually really like Pickens going forward. And then I think DK Metcalf is just too good, personally. But so I'm leaning those 2 guys. I don't know if that's I don't know where you stand, Trev. But
I like Pickens and Metcalf. Look, Cooper and I mean all these guys. Pickens aside, actually, Cooper and Metcalf both had pretty lackluster days. Metcalf is being shadowed by who was the highest paid cornerback in Surtain for one day before who was it? Jalen Ramsey got his deal in Miami. So Surtain just got paid. He was going to be all over DK Metcalf. I'm not worried about DK Metcalf. Cooper's going to have some great days. He's just such a target monster. He's definitely going to have some good days, but right now I just trust the Seattle offense and DK Metcalf more than Amari Cooper. And then to me, Pickens is the easy go-to. Like he is the guy. Lee saying, remember, Kamara was a backup for the Saints. So talking about Madison there. Madison has been good. He's shown some flashes in the past, right? But we'll see if he becomes the full-time guy over Zamir White. Let's get to wide receivers, and we'll get back to the chat after this. Drake London, 2 for 15 on just 3 targets. Wide receiver 80. And I will start here and hitting the panic button once again. And it has nothing to do with Drake London. And that's what sucks about this, man. Drake London is a very, very good wide receiver. But Kirk Cousins doesn't look healthy. Kirk Cousins doesn't look good at all. At the baseball game today, one of the dads came up and said, hey, I got a deep Superflex, 16-team Superflex league.
Jeez.
Is there anybody deep that you could, I should be picking up? And I said Michael Penix Jr., right? Like go, if it's a Superflex league with 16 teams, go pick up Penix now.
Yeah.
Because Kirk Cousins might not be the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons after week 4 if what we saw on Sunday is the same thing. And that just really has me panic about Drake London. We just drafted him in the 2nd round all offseason.
Yeah.
And the Falcons just talked about Bijan and how they're going to do everything through Bijan.
Yep.
And that's what they did. Everything went through Bijan. Pitts catches the touchdown. I'm pretty panicked about Drake London after week 1, and it has less to do with his talent and more to do with his quarterback's health and the way that this offense clearly is going to run through Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, your only hope right now is that they're still building chemistry, ? Or Pittsburgh's defense is that great, which is kind of a possibility too. I mean, he got pressured a decent amount. But there's a lot of fear there. I didn't see a ton of that game. So in terms of how healthy he looks, because Kirk's my guy. When he's on, he's as accurate as anyone if you keep him upright. But I don't know. It is scary to me because, like you said, we drafted Drake London 2nd round because we're all assuming this is a talent that when you go from Taylor Heineke / Desmond Ridder to Kirk Cousins, that upgrade is supposed to be pretty steep, and it did not look like that in week 1. So I think there's a fair amount of panic there. And again, we're hoping that the Steelers defense is that good, and there's still some chemistry issues between Kirk and his receivers. That's what you're hoping for, and that doesn't feel great. When you drafted a guy who should be your wide receiver 1 or your wide receiver 1B, right? Because if you took wide receiver, you did that because you thought you were going to get, significantly more production with London than your next guy after that. So yeah, it's definitely more in the panic mode for there.
Falcons get the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday Night Football this week. So we will all be able to see how Kirk Cousins looks. Amon-Ra St. Brown, which I know there's a question in the chat about a trade. I want to get to that, but I wanted to talk about Amon-Ra before we got to that.
Yep.
St. Brown, 3 for 13 on 6 targets, ends up as wide receiver 71. Where are you sitting here with our 1st round pick, middle of the 1st round? Yep. Amon-Ra St. Brown coming out with a wide receiver 71.
I'm going to be patient with the Sun God here. He's too good. I've watched the receiver documentary. He's going to look at that stat line and he's going to be furious, and he's going to come out and he's going to just dominate. I've always thought he's got a very consistent play style in terms of the amount of catches he gets and the yards he gets and the toughness he displays when he's on the field, that he's going to have to string together like 2 more of these before I get worried about St. Brown. I actually didn't get a lot of him Because when in the drafts where I would have been able to get him, I had running backs fall to me, like, Bijan or Breece Hall or something. So I overlooked him, but that wasn't because I wouldn't want him on my team. And I think that this Lions offense is still going to be one of the best. I think it was a little bit of an anomaly. I'm going to stay patient with Amon-Ra because I just think he's too good. I'm not going to worry about him yet.
I agree. He is very, very good. I put 50-50 down, and that's only because I think his ceiling is going to be lowered because I think Jameson Williams is the real deal. And we're going to talk about Jameson Williams in the party or pass part of it. But there's just a lot of mouths to feed, right? Samuel Porta, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. I mean, you saw them come out and just run the ball like 7 times in overtime with David Montgomery. Like that's going to happen on occasion. And so, yes, I mean, there's nothing wrong with his talent. You have to start St. Brown each and every week. I just think there's not as much ceiling here with St. Brown as what we wanted him to have, picking him in the middle of the first round if Jameson Williams is going to act like he did in week 1.
That's
Last fair. Wide receiver here, Chris Olave, 2 for 11, 2 targets, wide receiver 85 in a game that Derek Carr throws, 3 touchdowns?
3 touchdowns.
Chris Olave ends up as wide receiver 85. I'm just going to say patient. The game got out of hand. He's right back in your lineup, even against the stout defense of Dallas this week. I lost you.
I'm still planting my flag. Oh, sorry. I am still planting my flag like I did last week, so I feel bad for anyone that drafted Olave after I planted my flag, but I'm not worried about it either yet. I'm patient. The fear is because, when you look at the top 3 target getters were, the deep threat, Rashid Shaheed, and then 2 tight ends and Alvin Kamara. Like that's what's a little bit tough about Derek Carr's distribution. And so I think there's a real fear about how he spreads the ball around. That being said, you can't ignore your wide receiver 1. That just doesn't make any sense. And I refuse to believe that that's going to happen all season. So I'll take it as an anomaly game as well. I think my guy Olave, I'll plant my flag again that he's going to do better than 2 catches for 11 yards next week.
There we go. You heard it here first. 3 for 15.
That's right. The bar is really low.
Real quick here, Christian Reyes in the chat, is Amon-Ra and Pitts for Bijan and Komet a good trade? So essentially, I'm just going to look at like what side of this trade would I want to be on. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, I think Komet is unrosterable. I don't think he brings anything to the table. The Bears are running out Gerald Everett more than they're running out Cole Kmet. So I'm taking him off the table, honestly, in this trade. So I am trading a RB1 for a wide receiver 1 and a tight end 1. I like the Amon-Ra Pitts side of this because I'm getting 2 guys I can start every week. Bijan, you're getting like the super high upside. Mm-hmm. But Amon-Ra and Pitts, I can start both of those guys each and every week, and it just makes my starting lineup deeper, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I'm actually on the Bijan side, and that's just because, like you said, Komet doesn't do much for me. Unless there's a Gerald Everett injury and the Roma Dunze injuries more, but there's just so many mouths to feed in Chicago, and it's an offense that's not really spreading it around yet. Anyway, so that does nothing for me. I do think Bijan is one of the top couple difference makers, potential league winners. So I'm big on Bijan. What I will say is I'm not smash accepting the Bijan side until I'm double checking what my receiver room looks like. If I have too much upside versus consistency, then I'm rethinking it a little bit. But if I have even if I have kind of lower ceiling, but really solid receivers already, I'm okay getting Bijan there because I think he's going to be a next level above, and Pitts hasn't really proven it quite yet to me, but yeah, I think I think it might depend on team makeup a little bit for me, but I'm probably a little bit higher on Bijan than the average person as well. So that should be taken into account.
The last thing I'll say about this trade is this is something that I want to be doing after week 3 or 4, when I really have a good idea of what my team is. Yep. And if I have a guy like Bijan and I'm not winning, I'm going to trade him away and get more guys in my starting line.
Yeah,
if I've got a great team and I've got some guys on the bench that I can play each and every week, but I'm not playing them, then I'm 100% going to go ahead and move on from St. Brown and Pitts and bring on that league winner in Bijan.
Yeah.
So like this is like a week 3 or 4 type of trade that I want to know, like, what is my team? Right now you kind of have ideas, but you might not know exactly what your team is. So I think it's a fair trade.
Yeah.
But you just got to see where you're at. Okay, 2 tight ends real fast. Let's get through these.
Yep.
3 tight ends. Excuse me. I'm just going to say them all at the same time here. Mark Andrews, 2 for 11, tight end 28. Evan Ingram, 1 for 5, tight end 44. And Dalton Kincaid, 1 for 11, tight end 37. For me, I am patient on all 3 of these guys. Where are you at with these guys?
I'm patient on Evan Ingram, patient on Dalton Kincaid. I'm still very high on both of them. I think their quarterbacks are going to be just too good, and they're too elite of weapons. Like Dalton Kincaid and Evan Ingram, they're both like just really big athletic wide receivers. It might be just a little bit slower. Like they're really good targets. I'm actually a little bit panicked on Mark Andrews, and that I'm only saying that because at the end of last season, Isaiah Likely got a lot of run, and he just continues to produce when he's on the field. And I think if I'm the Ravens, I'm going to keep finding ways to get him the ball, personally. And I also just think that the Ravens passing game is a unique one. Like Lamar is a good passer, but it's Zay Flowers is obviously a big factor. Lamar's been ran a lot in week 1. I'm a little panicked on Mark Andrews just because of the draft capital that was used for him. And I think that, Isaiah Likely just looks really good when he's out there. So it seems to me that if I'm the Ravens, I don't know why I'm not taking him off the field. And he just might continue to eat into the Mark Andrews kind of volume share. So I'm a little panicked on Andrews actually.
Well, I teed you up for that one because I wanted to hear why you were panicked on Mark Andrews, because I am not. And I think I have a good argument for maybe I can talk you off the ledge a little bit here.
Okay.
Mark Andrews against a Steve Spagnuolo Chiefs defense has always been taken out of the game. Spags does a really, really good job, and it's worked. The Chiefs are beating the Ravens, it seems like, every time they play. AFC Championship last year, first game of the year this year, even if it is by a toe. When they play each other, Spags brackets Mark Andrews. Inside he's short, and he's got him deep. There's 2 guys, there's 3 guys. The last play of the game, there was 3 guys around Mark Andrews. Here's his last 5 games just against the Chiefs. 3 for 15, 3 for 22, 2 for 55, 2 for 15, and then on Thursday it was 2 for 11. It's just what the Chiefs do to the Ravens, and it's working. And I think that's, for me, is why I am not panicking here. I am very patient with Mark Andrews. I love Likely. I think Likely's going to be involved. I 100% agree with that point to it. I just don't think we need to panic on Mark Andrews. I went out to a work function Friday night, and somebody at the work function said you could probably drop Mark Andrews, and I'm just like, no, what are you doing?
Definitely don't drop him.
Don't panic on Mark Andrews. Now we can come back next week, and Mark Andrews might be right back on here, and maybe I changed my mind. But for now, just knowing the way the Chiefs play against the Ravens, that's why I'm going to be patient with Mark Andrews here and not go into complete panic mode.
I will feel like I will say you persuaded me pretty well. And I will also say that I'll admit I'm a little bit recency bias here. It's hard for me to picture Mark Andrews because he's been injured a lot recently. And so maybe that's creeping in the back of my mind just because he hasn't been producing as much lately. He's been hurt a lot. So yeah, I think it's probably best to exercise patience. And even though I'm a little panicked, yeah, definitely don't drop Mark Andrews. Don't.
Yeah.
And maybe he's a buy low candidate too. Maybe he's someone you could.
I mean, there could be people out there who are straight up panicking, and if that's the case, go after. I would be fine with going and getting him, right?
For sure.
Quickly, your thoughts on ETN? He ends up as RB28 on the week. I'm not worried about ETN. Again, he fumbled the ball. He was like on the 3 or 4 yard line. If he holds on to that ball, he's probably scoring on the next play or two. They're going to give him all the run. Tank Bigsby did have a little bit of action in this game, but I think it's ETN's backfield.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're right to be a little bit like, wait a second, because Tank Bigsby had a much bigger role than we were all expecting. But I've always been high on ETN, and I love ETN, the pass catcher. And I can't envision a world in which he's not getting the bulk of the targets out of the backfield. And I think once that offense starts cooking a little bit more, I think ETN will be fine. I like him as a player. I'm going to be pretty patient on him for now. So.
All right, let's go to party or pass. So again, these are guys who went off this week, and we want to know, are we all in on these guys or not? I'm going to loop a couple of these guys together just because I think you and I are pretty much on the same page. Okay. Starting with quarterback, Baker Mayfield, 24 of 30, 289 yards, 4 touchdowns, ends up as quarterback 2. And then Derek Carr, 19 of 23, 200 yards with 3 touchdowns, ends up as quarterback 6. I know I'm passing on both of these guys. They played the Washington Commanders and the Carolina Panthers, respectively.
Yeah.
Really, really terrible defenses. Serviceable quarterbacks, serviceable NFL quarterbacks. But on a fantasy perspective, I don't expect them to be up here in the top 6 week after week. Josh, you kind of agree with that?
Yep, I'm passing on both those guys. Derek Carr, I'm just very upset that he didn't throw to my wide receiver 1, so I'm not even going to talk anymore about Derek Carr. I'm just kidding.
That's right.
But no, yeah, it's the Panthers game, so we got to see more. And he's always been a check down artist, and I'm worried. You just worry he's not going to put up, if he doesn't have 3 touchdowns every game. Like, he only threw for like 200 yards, so it's not overly exciting for him. And then Baker Mayfield, his accuracy's always scared me, and I know with Mike Evans bolstering his numbers and catching everything, Mike Evans, a Hall of Famer, he's awesome, but Baker's just going to be way too inconsistent that even if he has a couple more games like this where he has 4 touchdowns and almost 300 yards, I don't think you're going to be able to predict which one unless it's another bad matchup like the Commanders. So yeah, I'm passing on both of them long term. I think there's a lot better quarterbacks you can get, or at least ones with some rushing upside that you can take that'll be a little bit more stable for you. So
then the other quarterback here, Jaden Daniels, I think we're both on the same page here. 17 of 24, 184 yards, but he has 88 rushing yards. He adds 2 touchdowns here, ends up as quarterback 3. Wow. I mean, he just came out, shot out like a cannon. Phenomenal week 1 for Jaden Daniels. And this team's going to be behind because we just talked about the Washington Commanders defense. They're going to be behind a lot. He's going to run a lot. We're both partying here, right? Like, let's go, Jaden Daniels.
Everybody wants to party with Jaden Daniels because they're always going to be losing. He's always going to be running. And like, for a benchmark floor, 180 yards, let's go. He's going to learn how to throw for 225 pretty soon. Like, it'll be great. Maybe even a couple touchdowns. He's going to be running all over the place. It
feels like 40, 50 yards. It might be low on a rushing after week 1.
Right. So you just, for him, because he runs so much, you just have to, sadly, you just got to hope he's careful enough so he doesn't get hurt, because he's a really fun player to watch. And you can tell he's one of the he's a little bit of an older prospect. Like, he looks pretty mature for a rookie quarterback. So I think he'll come back from mistakes better as well. So and there's
good offensive coordinator. Right. So he used I can't remember his name now, but he used to be with Kyler in Arizona. So
Kingsbury.
You're right.
Yep.
All right, J.K. Dobbins from the running back position, 10 carries for 135 yards and a touchdown. Talk about efficiency. Ends up as RB4. And Josh, how you feeling here? Are you going to party with him or are you going to pass?
I wrote on our note sheet that with J.K. Dobbins, I'm going to call it one of those awkward gatherings. I want you to picture your first middle school, high school party where no one's talking to each other. There's a really modest array of snacks and everyone's nervous to start conversation. No one's really playing games or just looking at each other. I feel so bad for the guy because I've been high on him every time he gets healthy and then he gets hurt again. And I'm super happy that he ran for over 130 yards. And I wanted to jump on board and party with him. So I'm going to call it the awkward gathering that hopefully goes long enough and everyone loosens up a little bit and then he stays healthy and we have a party for the whole season. But I have to see it a little bit more from him before I'm going to fully party with Jake.
That is phenomenal. I love that. That's a great point.
Because he looked good. He looked good.
Yeah, I would agree that he looked good on his two big runs, right? I think that was good. That's why I'm gonna pass though, because 135 yards, two of them was like 100 of the yards, and he also got caught from behind on one of those long runs.
Yeah.
And you just kind of mentioned the injury stuff. Looked fine. He only had 10 rushes. Gus Edwards also had 10 rushes. It's going to be a split backfield.
Yep.
If I have Dobbins and somebody's like actually wants to party, not even like an awkward middle school dance, like they're all in and throwing a rager for J.K. Dobbins, I'm trading him. Like I'm like, yeah, you can have him. I'm going to see what I can get out of him and move forward. So that's kind of where I'm at with J.K. Dobbins. I hope that it's back. I hope that it turns into more than an awkward gathering, but I am going to pass myself and I'll let you all be managers at the awkward gathering.
Let us suffer at the awkward gathering.
Love it. All right, couple wide receivers here. Mm-hmm. Allen Lazard, 6 for 89 and 2 touchdowns, ends up as wide receiver 3. Aaron Rodgers' favorite wide receiver. This one's a little tough for me. I'll go first just because I think I'm not really sure. I'm kind of on the fence, but I think that you are pretty heavily on one way or the other. So I want to say pass. Like that's where my gut reaction is like, nah, this ain't happening all year long. It's still Allen Lazard. But man, he has such great rapport with Aaron Rodgers. Josh, sway me one way or the other, man.
Yeah, I would just reference the old day or the old version of even Randall Cobb, kind of at the tail end of the Rodgers Packers career. Like, didn't have it much with anyone else, but with Rodgers, he still was very productive. I just think that Lazard, I don't picture him as an elite level receiver, but as long as he's got Rodgers slinging him the ball, I know that the Jets didn't look particularly great, but they also had some weird momentum shifts, right? They had the Breece Hall fumble early on. Lazard actually dropped a third down conversion that stifled one of their early drives before the game got out of hand. So like the Jets, I think they're shaking off a little rust, and I think that offense will be pretty good. And I think Garrett Wilson's amazing. But they'll need a wide receiver too. And yeah, Mike Williams is there, but I just think that the rapport with Rodgers that Lazard has, I think I may be overvaluing that too much, but 2 touchdowns. I think he had 6 catches for 89 yards as well. Like I feel like he's got more of the same in him. Maybe not 2 touchdowns every week, but I think you can count on between 5 and 8 catches every week. I think that's a pretty safe floor. So I feel good about it. I mean, I'm not like seeking out Lazard, but I'm picking him up if he was on waivers. Maybe I'm maybe putting him in a flex over a guy who's questionable or who's struggling a little bit. So I think there's some value there, but I'm not like, he's not a league winner or anything like that.
Yeah, he was all over my waivers. I don't think I really touched him anywhere, but I know he was out there and available.
Yep.
Jameson Williams, 5 for 121 and a touchdown. Wide receiver 5, baby. I am all party all the time. I've been waiting on this since he got back from his injury when he came out of college. This is awesome. And there's been so much coach speak all offseason about Jameson Williams. I'm all in here to party with Jameson Williams. Are you on the same page?
Yep, exactly. We saw that all of the training camp talk was confirmed in week 1, and that just feels good, right? We always knew he had the talent. And so it looks like he's put it together. They said he put it together, then he puts it together and puts a great performance in. So there's no reason not to party with Jameson Williams. And I think he's really potentially a high-end wide receiver too. Like you might need him to get a touchdown, but I mean, if he has 5 catches for 100 yards every week, like you're going to be happy. You're going to be super happy.
Last wide receiver here, Alec Pierce, 3 catches, 125 yards and a touchdown, ends up wide receiver 10. Again, we're talking about guys who we didn't really expect to be here, right? In the top 10 or whatever at their position. Are you passing on Pierce here?
Yeah, I'm passing. I drafted him in a keeper league as a rookie, and I held out hope for a while. It hasn't really come together for him. He's a little bit too boomer bust for me. Anthony Richardson is also pretty boomer bust from a passing standpoint, so there's that to worry about. But my biggest issue is that Michael Pittman's still number 1, and Josh Downs will be back in a few weeks, and I think
Yeah.
he's going to eat into those targets. So nothing against Alec Pierce, the player, but I just don't know if he can do this consistently. And he only had 3 catches. He just had that really nice long one. So I'm not jumping on that party train yet. I'm going to pass on Alec Pierce for now.
Yeah, long bomb could have went to AD Mitchell. When Josh Downs is back, it could go to Josh Downs. It's that kind of a long bomb could go to multiple guys. Ashton Dublin could have gotten involved there. Like you just never know in Indy. All right, 3 tight ends here. Let's put 2 of them together real fast. Are you in on Foster Moreau or Juwan Johnson, the tight ends of New Orleans? They both end up as top 5 tight ends.
I'm not, just because there's also Taysom Hill there who's going to get touches. I know he's going to get carries more so necessarily than passes. And again, for a lot of this Saints stuff, it was a weird game. We got to see him do it against somebody, not the Panthers, to be honest. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm passing on both of them. And then Isaiah Likely, my man, 9 catches, 111 yards, 1 touchdown, tight end numero uno on the week, baby. It is absolutely party time. I already mentioned it once. Like, I'm not panic on Mark Andrews. I don't think that he's going to overcome Mark Andrews. I think Mark Andrews will still be a focal point. I think Zay Flowers is still a focal point. But I think Isaiah Likely is the number 3 pass catcher in Baltimore. They've been looking for a guy like this quite a while over the past couple of years. It looks like they found a way to utilize this man on the field while Mark Andrews is on the field. And he's just one big toe from another 10 yards and another touchdown.
Yes.
And just absolutely separating from the tight end field this week. But yeah, Isaiah Likely, we're all in on this guy, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, everything you just said and everything I said earlier, like I'm a little worried about Andrews because I think Isaiah Likely could be that good. So I'm in for him. I think even with Mark Andrews, if Likely's my tight end, I'm starting him, and I'm hoping for that balance. And then if Andrews kind of takes over again, you got to watch that play out, which would be a bummer. But as it looks like now, I think he's going to be involved. Like you said, the third option sounds about right. And when they're not playing the Chiefs, I think Lamar's going to throw it a lot more than he did. And even there'll be even more to spread around. So
absolutely. All right, that was part of your pass. Liked that segment here. We got our start sits. We are going to try to get through this, hopefully over the next 15 minutes, keep this about an hour and a half or so if we can. If you're in the chat here, you have a start sit question, this is the time to throw it our way. We will try to help you and make your decisions as you go through. Before we get there, I saw this one. Christian has AR, Brees, ETN, Amon-Ra, Shaheed, Pitts. Is this good? Yes. You probably had a fine week. And what should I try to get for Amon-Ra? I think we both kind of talked about we're patient with Amon-Ra.
Yep.
We think he's going to be just fine. I don't think I'm necessarily going to go off and move him.
Especially because he balances out. Rashid Shaheed's a little bit still boomer bust right now, I feel like. So Amon-Ra, this week notwithstanding, should be a more consistent producer, in my opinion. So I think I like your roster as it is right now.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is if you can get the name of Amon-Ra St. Brown and, somebody wants to give up like they think they're getting a lot for like a Xavier Worthy, who's going to be involved a lot. And then you can get like another big name guy with him. So you can maybe, I don't know, somebody who didn't play as well, like a Drake London. If you're not worried about Drake London, like I am, maybe you get like a Drake London and a Xavier Worthy. And now you have, 2 guys that could boom every single week. I don't really love it, but like that's kind of like the idea that I would be running there if I am full panic of Amon-Ra and I just got to trade him because I hate him on my team. I'm trying to get 2 wide receivers that I know I can play every single week and be fine with it. That's the way I would look at it if I'm trading Amon-Ra, but I would not be trading Amon-Ra after 1 week at all.
Agreed.
That would not be my recommendation. All right, starts and sits for week 2. We're just going to kind of go through position by position and give a start and a sit. A little different than what Dan and I did last year when we'd go through all of our starts and all of our sits. We're just going to do starts and sits together. And Josh, I will let you have the floor for quarterback. Who are your starts and sits of the week?
Yeah, and I was going to point out as well that the guys I brought up are guys that aren't like insta start guys, right? Like they're the guys that you're starting regardless. So these are guys that are maybe on the fringe or might have a little bit more upside than they would normally. My quarterback start is Justin Herbert. They get the Chargers get the Panthers this week. He didn't look particularly fantastic last week, but the Raiders, for how bad they are, their defense is actually pretty legit. And I know that with Harbaugh in town, there's a lot more running. And I think Lee made a comment of that in the comment section, and I totally get that. But you saw some rapport build up with Lad McConkey, who I've been high on all offseason, and I think that Herbert's in line for a few touchdowns, and at least like 250, 300 yards. So I think he'll be a solid start. Not going to be quarterback one, in my opinion, but I think he'll be a startable quarterback for this week. Do you want my sit as well first?
And who you sitting?
Yeah. I'm sitting Baker Mayfield. I passed on Baker Mayfield, and I know people are running the waiver wire for him. I don't buy it, and that might be evidence enough. You guys should all go get Baker Mayfield because I think he's going to be terrible next week. But they have the Lions. The Lions
that's tough matchup.
That's going to be a tough matchup. Stafford needed like 49 passes to get over 300 yards on Sunday night. And so I think the Lions defense is going to be decent this year. And Baker, I don't buy his inaccuracies, to be honest. So I'm sitting Baker Mayfield. I'm not going to the waiver wire to get him. I'm sticking with my guns, even if I had a poor performance at quarterback this past week. So
I am going Justin Fields as my start of the week. It looks like he is going to get another opportunity there in Pittsburgh now, week 2 against the Denver Broncos. He didn't have like a phenomenal game one, but he did run the ball 14 times. And that's what we like to see from a running quarterback. And that's what we like to see in fantasy football. We talked about that at the top of the show. He also had a 73% completion rate, which I thought was pretty solid for Justin Fields. I think he has great upside in week 2. And much better than I think Joe Burrow has, which is why Joe Burrow is my sit of the week. I can't overstate my concern for the Bengals. I can't overstate my concern for Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, these running backs. I mean, the only guy I think I like right now is Yoshi Voss, or however you say his last name, Andre Yoshi.
Pretty good, I think, yeah.
Because he's gonna run 100% of the routes out there, and we know he's gonna play. I just think this team's in shambles right now, so I'm going to sit Joe Burrow, and I'm going to start the running quarterback of Justin Fields.
Yep.
Again, thank you all for being here. Hit that like button. If you have any start sits, throw them in the chat. We're going to move on to running back here. Josh, you can go first because I realized I was supposed to go first for quarterbacks, and I messed that up. So you get to go first again for running backs. Who is your start and sit for running back this week?
Sweet. One of my dynasty leagues, I was pleasantly surprised with Brian Robinson Jr. with the Commanders. We talk about the Commanders. They probably aren't going to win a lot of games, but their offense is going to be on the field trying to catch up in a lot of games. 12 carries, 40 yards, a touchdown, but he also had 3 catches for 49 yards. He was very active. And the Commanders get to the Giants this week. The Vikings just beat up on the Giants, and Kevin O'Connell got a lot of running plays in when Dexter Lawrence was out getting a breather for the Giants. So if Kingsbury can do that for the Commanders, I think we can look at a decent running game from Brian Robinson. He had 18 points for me. I was pleasantly surprised for that as my RB2. So he's a guy that you might not be super excited on, or maybe you still think Eckler is going to have a lot of value, but I think Brian Robinson's got off to a good start. I think there's no reason why they wouldn't continue that with him against a great matchup against the Giants. My sit is to go along with your fading the Bengals. I'm sitting Zach Moss. I mean, he had 44 yards on only 9 carries and a touchdown. But I don't see this offense moving the ball well against the Chiefs this weekend. Chase Brown only had 3 carries, so he didn't necessarily eat into it, but they just didn't have a lot of offensive output. And I think I'm kind of fading the Bengals offense right now as well. So if you drafted Zach Moss hoping for that running back 2 upside, it's definitely not there yet, and I would be sitting him personally if he was on my roster. So. Uh-oh. I think Trevor froze. At least Trevor froze on my screen, so I apologize to the to the people watching. I think he's probably going to come back in here in a second, but a lot of Bengals hate. Sorry, Bengals fans out there. I still think Joe Burrow's great, and who knows? They're playing at Arrowhead, so you never know. They might show out, but I think there's a lot to be worried about there with the Bengals offense. I will, as we wait for Trevor to get back, I will mention my my wide receiver starts and sit as well. And again, if like Trevor was mentioning, if you have one in the chat that you want to put in, we can definitely give you a suggestion there. You can see my tagline down there, easy pickings. I'm starting George Pickens again. Didn't have exactly a blow up game, but he had 6 catches, 80 some yards. A pretty decent floor. He had a couple long gainers. Justin Fields is a decent long passer. And he got the target share is what I'm most excited about. It's over 30% right now. The Steelers don't have anyone outside of Pickens right now at wide receiver. So he's going to get all the looks, and he's always on the field because he's a great blocker and he loves to block for that team that, we know the Steelers are there to run. So I just think for target share and volume and things like that, I think Pickens is a nice pick. He'll get into the end zone eventually, right? And so if he's getting six, seven catches for you, I think he's going to put up decent at wide receiver 2 numbers. And so I think if that's what you're looking for, I don't think he's going to compete with your wide receiver 1, that's for sure. But I think Pickens has a lot of upside this weekend for the whole season for the Steelers, especially as they go to Denver next week. I know Denver's defense looked pretty decent, but their offense isn't going to be able to stay on the field. They're going to tire out, and I think the Steelers will be able to put up some points. So George Pickens is my start. I feel like my wide receiver sits a little controversial. It'd be interesting to hear what Trevor thinks when he gets back on here, but I'm sitting Stephon Diggs, which sounds really terrible. He's coming off a 6-catch, 33-yard, 2-touchdown game. Lee's comment, that's great. KC Wi-Fi sucks. Yeah, that's tough. We rely a lot on the internet, don't we? It's a bummer. I was talking about Stephon Diggs. The 2 touchdowns, amazing. 6 catches, love it. But 33 yards on 6 catches is scary to me. Not to mention he had the third fewest targets out of Nico Collins and Tank Dell. And so, I know Trevor's talking at the beginning. We're pleasantly surprised with Stephon Diggs' production with his first game with Houston. And you love to see it because he is a talented receiver. But I still think we need to wait and see how this target share shapes up. But right now it looks to me like Nico Collins is going to kind of take the lead as wide receiver 1. Tank Dell is always going to be the guy that takes the top off. And so you're looking at Stephon Diggs, maybe the third option, maybe the slot option, definitely shorter yardage throws. So it's going to require a lot of volume, and without the 2 touchdowns, his production is not very good. And so I'm actually fading Stephon Diggs a little bit. And I even wrote in my notes that that's controversial because if you started Stephon Diggs, you probably got him at a value in your draft and you're thinking, oh, this is great production. But I'm a little worried. I'm a little bit worried. I think it's some tenuous production, I would say, going into week 2. Their matchup is good though, because they do have, oh no, sorry, their matchup is not good. I was looking at a different team for a second. They have the Bears, and the Bears also have a good defense. So that's another thing. I'm worried that the overall passing volume in Houston is going to go down. So for my wide receivers, I'm starting George Pickens. I'm sitting Stephon Diggs again. I think that is relatively controversial, so feel free to ignore that or yell at me for that one. My tight end, we have a comment. I'll wait till Trevor gets back so we can put some of those in so we can do some start sit. My tight end start is actually Brock Bowers, which is interesting because we just talked about how the Raiders offense isn't very good, but Brock Bowers in week 1 as a rookie tight ends typically, last couple of years it's been getting better with, Sam Laporta, Trey McBride, but tight end's typically a position where it takes a couple of years for a guy to really kind of work his way into dominance. But Brock Bowers led the Raiders with targets. He had 8 targets. He had 6 catches. And their offense didn't look very good, but he still was able to put up some decent numbers. And so I like that floor if he's going to be a leading target getter. I know they have Devontae Adams, right? But I just think that he's one of those elite talents that might supersede what the offense has to begin with. So I'm starting Brock Bowers especially if I'm streaming tight end. Now, personally, I worked really hard to get like Trey McBride, and I have Sam Laporta in the ADP league because I maybe reached a little bit on my tight ends because I like those high end guys. But if you didn't, if you punted or you waited a while and took Brock Bowers, I think you're feeling pretty good about that right now after the first week. So hopefully they're able to keep feeding him the ball because he's one of the better tight end talents we've seen in the past few years. And it was interesting when Christian put his trade in the chat because I'm actually sitting Cole Kmet. And that might be too obvious, but there's 2 decent pass catching tight ends in Chicago. There's 3 potentially great receivers in Chicago, and I don't see. I need to see Caleb Williams really spread it around before I can think that he'll support a tight end, or he has to show that he's going to lean on his tight end a little bit, which I don't know if he did enough in week 1. So I'm waiting on Kmet. I'm not benching or I'm not dropping Kmet. But I'm definitely not starting him this week if I have a better option. And I think I can probably find one on the waivers, even if I don't have one on my bench to begin with. I can't put the comments up right now because I'm not in charge of the stream here, but we have Ravens Show Yo. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Said, who would you rather have as your 2 keepers between these 3 wide receivers? So the 3 wide receivers are AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, and Puka Nacua. Who would you rather have as your 2 keepers between these 3 wide receivers? My first one there is going to be Garrett Wilson. I just think that even though he hasn't produced where we want him to produce, the amount he's produced, which with really subpar quarterback play is awesome. And I think every time I watch him play, he just makes catch after catch that impresses me. He's still very young. So I'm keeping Garrett Wilson for sure. And especially if Aaron Rodgers continues to be healthy this year in New York, I'm pretty high on Garrett Wilson. So I like that as a keeper note for sure. After that, it gets a little interesting. Right now I'm leaning AJ Brown. That might just be because Puka's hurt. I don't know. Puka Nacua had an amazing season last year, and he, there's no reason to think he couldn't do something similar. Maybe not this to the same degree, but he's a little bit less proven. And AJ Brown still very much in his prime. He got paid. He doesn't have to have any contract drama. He's on the Eagles a perennially good offense where he's the top guy. He's going to get wide receiver 1 target share. So I think to be a contender, I feel like AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson would be my 2 picks. However, if you think that this is just a minor injury for Puka Nacua and last year you saw something you didn't see in a lot of receivers, Cooper Kupp is on the wrong side of 30 now, or at least right at 30. And so this could easily be Puka Nacua's team. It kind of basically was last year. And so I don't know if there's a wrong two keepers there unless you don't include Garrett Wilson. I think you have to have Garrett Wilson. I'd prefer AJ Brown, but I don't think I would judge you if you kept, Garrett Wilson and Puka Nacua. I think those would be 2 great keepers. And to be fair, if those 3 are what you're choosing for, that's a nice set of receivers to choose for keepers, right? If it's depending on round, right, then, obviously you keep Puka because you probably got him in a later round last year. And that gives you, you don't have to sacrifice one of your higher picks for your draft this year or maybe for next year, depending on when you draft him this year. So anyway, hope that makes sense, but I got Garrett Wilson for sure. AJ Brown, my preference, full PPR as well. Yeah. I mean, that's a good distinction. I mean, Puka maybe has the upside in receptions, but I just think AJ Brown has the touchdown upside. He still gets plenty of catches. He's going to have all the targets and still Garrett Wilson for me for there as well. So yeah, that's a nice set of wide receivers. So I think keeping both of them, keeping any 2 of those is going to be pretty solid for you. All right. Still no Trevor. So that KC Wi-Fi is really bad, Lee. I don't know. You guys got to fix that out there. I don't know what's going on. I also see Lee mentioned that Lazard got a free TD and it was late when the game was over. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, there was some garbage time in Jets 49ers. I know I was talking about the Lazard Rodgers rapport. I feel like if Rodgers is on, he's kind of one of those elite talents, right? And even at his age, and the fact that Lazard followed him out to New York, I just feel like if they have some sort of connection, I think at the minimum he's going to be a low end wide receiver 2/flex, maybe not wide receiver 2, but at least a startable flex, and with the potential of having a 2 touchdown week like he just did. So, that's why I partied with Alan Lazard. I just, Rodgers is one of those guys that when he has his guys, he does really, really well. So, no, thanks, Lee. Appreciate it. Great show. Appreciate it. I think what I'll do is, so I don't see Trevor coming back right now. He must be having some more technical issues. I'm going to quick read his starts and sits that he didn't get to. I'm not going to offer up necessarily the reasons because I don't know what his would. I'd rather have him share those, but in case we have to end the show without him here, that way you guys would have. Oh, there he's back! Yay!
I'm back.
All right, perfect
My
timing.
God, I'm so sorry, man.
That's all right.
Freaking internet just disappeared.
Lee bailed you out. He blamed the KC Wi-Fi.
It is, man. They talk about this Google Fiber. So great. So great. Wow.
Nice.
Wow.
Right,
well, thanks for holding it down. Let me get my mic back on here.
Oh, I can talk about football for a long time. So, especially fantasy.
That's what we do.
So I went through.
Well, Lee says great show. So for you, not for me. It's great. I will, if I may, I assume you went through all yours. Did you talk about mine too?
No, I was actually I just said, I'm going to give you Trevor's start and sit in case we have to finish without him, but I wasn't going to offer any reasoning. So you can go right through your list.
I don't even know if you have can you end it?
I don't know either. Cause I was responding to the comments cause I can see the comments, but I can't post the comment. Yeah. So you should
Trevor check out my Raven.
Yeah,
What's up, Raven show, yo?
Yeah, I gave him my answer. Let's see what yours is.
Who would rather you have as 2 keepers between these 2 wide receivers, AJB, Garrett Wilson, or Puka? Who would I rather have a keeper? If I'm just saying it's the same value, I'm like just keeping them at the same value. Over time, I mean, Garrett Wilson is 100% one of them. The other 2 are just because I think he's just an absolute stud.
Yep.
The other 2, I think I like AJ Brown, but if I'm thinking the next 3 to 4 years, I like Puka better. If I'm thinking just this year, next year, I like AJ Brown. But this kind of sounds like a dynasty-esque type of question, and I like Puka. Mm-hmm. He's much younger. He's only in his 2nd year. Not really worried about this knee injury being lingering for long term. AJ Brown is, obviously halfway through his 2nd contract already. So if this is for a dynasty, I'm going to keep this guy for the next 3 to 5 years. I'm going to go Puka.
Oh, that's fair. We agreed on Garrett Wilson. I said the same thing. I said
that's a smash. That's easy.
I picked Wilson and I leaned AJ Brown. I like him a little better, kind of like you said for the moment, and just he's still pretty much in his prime as well. So I picked those 2, but I also said as long as Garrett Wilson's one of them, you can keep the other one that you prefer.
The other 2 are probably going to be similar. What am I at? Okay, start sits for running back real fast. Jerome Ford is my start of the week. I actually like your Brian Robinson call quite a bit. That's about when I left was whenever it fell off was when you were talking about Brian Robinson. I definitely would have taken him as well. But I was second in the show doc. And so my second is Jerome Ford. 18 opportunities last week, was on the field for 75% of the snaps. I think you can go ahead and put him right back in there. Jacksonville is a softer defense than Dallas was. So I'm not worried about that. My sit of the week is your boy, Aaron Jones. Mm-hmm. He's a part of this new same face, but new place, all these running backs, right?
Yeah.
And he succeeded, had top 10 finish, great start to the year.
Yep.
But facing the 49ers, man, that's a whole different ball game. Breece Hall couldn't even crack the top 12 and running backs in week 1. So definitely pushing Aaron Jones down quite a bit in my rankings this week. Running at wide receiver, I'm starting Malik Neighbors. Gosh, Malik Neighbors, not Willis. Neighbors.
Malik Willis.
Yeah, the underlying usage was there for Neighbors. 100% of the snap share, 18% of the target share. Giants get the Commanders. We talked about the Commanders quite a bit. I'm not worried about starting my Giants against the Commanders. I don't care how bad Daniel Jones looks. And I'm starting Calvin Ridley because Will Levis might actually suck. And it's against the Jets. And so that's kind of but I think that you might actually be looking at him in the flex spot. So he's going to project well. You're looking at your projections. he's going to have, whatever, a PPR league. He's probably going to project for like 9 to 11, which is like the 3 other guys on your team are going to project for. I would just say no to Ridley. And then a guy I really want to talk about today, but I won't talk as much about him now, is Colby Parkinson at tight end. Without Puka Nacua, obviously Cooper Kupp's going to have 20, 25 targets, but it's going to open up some targets for Colby Parkinson there in LA. If you don't have one of like the top 6 to 8 tight ends and you need to stream, you maybe lost Njoku, maybe lost Ferguson. I like Parkinson as like my streaming tight end this week. I would definitely start him over my sit of the week, who's going to be Dallas Goedert. Atlanta's not a great football team, but the defense wasn't bad. And I also don't think that Atlanta's going to push the Eagles at all. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for Dallas Goedert in week 2. That was my very, very quick start sits. Hopefully I didn't miss any of you guys' questions. Josh, thanks for holding down the fort while I dealt with my internet, and I
Fair enough.
hit refresh so many times, like trying to make this thing happen.
The funny thing is I didn't know when you froze, because you froze in like this smile thing, and I was like, oh, cool. Trevor's really agreeing with what I'm saying.
I love this take.
And then I was like, wait a second, I don't think his expressions changed in a while.
I love this take. Before we get out of here, Raven Show Yo says, thank you so much. I actually asked the question because I'm in a trade negotiation in my home league. Puka, Shakir, Zach Moss for Adams, A-Chain, and a 25 first. Oh, man. That's pretty legit. My wide receiver room will be AJB, Wilson, Debo, Adams, Diggs. My RB room with the A-Chain, Connor, Montgomery, Gus Bus, Justice Hill, Dowdle, Jeff Wilson, if he makes the trade. So essentially he's trading Puka Nacua. The way I would look at this is you're trading Puka Nacua for Devontae Adams, Devin A-Chain, and a 2025 first. Zach Moss, I think, is not really worth much.
Nope.
Khalil Shakir is nice, but again, he's not long term. I like the Devontae Adams, Devin A-Chain, and a 2025 first on that side. Like easy.
Yeah, for sure. I think, especially knowing that you will have AJ Brown and Garrett Wilson, I think you can feel okay parting with Puka Nacua, because you're obviously still a contender, and then that 2025 first,
nice.
you're right in the thick of things to grab a good rookie next year. So that's a sweet trade for you.
Yeah, if you can pull that off. I mean, I'm even like willing to throw in, say, like a third. I don't know how much you guys can trade your drafts if it's the full dynasty or whatnot, but throw in like a 3rd round pick or maybe even a future pick, something like that, just to kind of entice it a little more. I would love to get Adams, A-Chain, and that 2025 first. Josh, what do you got for the people? Are you got any other shows this week? You got any writing going on?
No, but I did my first reaction of the week. I finally got back on my own podcast where I just talk about the Vikings games. So, it's called Vikings Dominate the Giants. Really short and sweet. It was happy times because the Vikings looked really good. We'll see if that's the same thing after next week's game against the Niners. But you can expect Mike on the Vikes ranting Sunday night, Monday night, one of those times when I can get one in. But otherwise, just next week here for more start sit, and hopefully after a Chris Olave masterclass is what.
That's right. That's right. I love that. Let's go, Chris Olave. Follow me on Twitter at TrevorS_FF. Follow ADP on Twitter at ADP podcast_FF. And then, as always, Bite Size Sports, y'all. Great show last night by Necessary Roughness. They're doing a good job. They go like in the weeds, get their hand in the dirt, talking football. It's great stuff. I very much enjoy watching it. If I can't get to them live, I always go back and watch again because I just really think that the things that they're saying is sharp, and I think we can use it in fantasy sometimes, thinking through some of the things that they are talking through.
It's just a good comprehensive look at the NFL. It's really
it's good football talk. Like if you just want to talk football or love football, it's good football talk. Follow Bite Size Sports at Bite_size Sports. As always, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We are well on our way to 700 subscribers. That is our goal this football season. Good luck in week 2. Thank you all for hanging with Josh while I dealt with the internet. And good luck. We hope next week we can all come back as winners. Take care.
Have a good one.